Hello my dear friends, how is it going? I'm Ari Theriger and here I am today to further expand on the case of the Hand of Irulegi, which shows us both an Iberian script written in the Old Basque language, part of the Vasconic languages and scripts, as well as an insight into the pre-Roman religions and belief systems of the Iberian Peninsula. Don't worry. I'm not going to repeat what was said on the previous video concerning this extraordinary finding. I'll save you from all of that. Well, save perhaps isn't the best choice of words. I'm not a bloody messiah, but you get the point. Sorry. If you haven't watched the previous video, well, I suggest that you do and then come back to this one, if you have the time, of course. Now, today I would like to draw the attention to other points of Vasconic folklore and mythology, as well as belief systems that may shed a light on the meaning of the Hand of Irulegi. And I'm going straight to the point. Well, this is one of those cases where a person, in this case myself, forgets some details of something we already know and have come about at some point, and one day comes and we have a dream and then, wait, hang on. So it came to my mind an important archaeological finding that has a connection between the Iberian language and the Basque Iberian writing, as we see in the sculpture or in the monument with sculpted hands found in Tamarite di Litera, and which makes reference to a god from the pre-Roman Iberian Peninsula called Nathin or Nathin. Give me a few minutes to unpack this. I'm talking about the Estela di Benefar. It's an Iberian stele that was possibly an architectural element of a unique building or had a commemorative function, therefore erected to celebrate something and possibly an expression of devotion or gratitude to a specific deity. We have very interesting reliefs on these stele that reminds us of Irulegi's hand, as well as other representations of hands that were found in the Basque territory. And we are then faced with reliefs with two hands, a possible shield and a possible spear, a griffin, and the remains of warriors, and framing a careful inscription in Iberian characters. It is a stele dated to the 2nd century before the Common Era to the 1st century of the Common Era. This archaeological monument, La Vispesa, and also known as Stela di Benifar, is located in Tamarite de Literra in the province of Huesca. This is a town where there are already clear traces of Roman presence, and well, it is curious for that reason because, as we will see later on, some elements of pre-Roman Iberian beliefs that we find here would later also enter the Roman belief systems. Well, the stele narrates an episode of war, or even a war episode in Iberian Basque mythology. As I said, we have some concrete representations here that can more or less express an idea or draw a picture of a mythological event, or the representation of battle and offerings to a god of war, of which the relief represents. There are representations of a shield, as I said, and the spear, figures of mutilated corpses, and a griffin in an attitude of devouring, and then clearly representations of hands stand out. The monument is more commemorative than funerary in nature and must have been erected in honor of the god Nathin, or Nathin, to which the inscription in Iberian script alludes. There are some translations for what is written here. The most recent, and using Basque as a reference, is in the great gate of heaven, or of the sky, in the meadows of the plains and on the slopes of the great valley is Nathin. Nathin is a pre-Roman god from the Iberian Peninsula who is found in various beliefs of pre-Roman ethnic groups from the Iberian Peninsula, as well as in their religions and mythologies, also known by other names, of course, such as Neton, Neto, Neto, and Nethi. We know from several comparisons of writings and archaeological finds across the Iberian Peninsula that He was a god of war, and if there was any more doubt concerning that, the Romans themselves later on adopted this deity, calling him Mars Neto, clearly linking him with their god of war. A deity of ancient Iberian Peninsula. It was revered in many places and in many cultures of the peninsula, but mainly by the Iberians and Celt-Iberians and a few honorable discoveries among the Lusitanians. Nathan is also a sun god and god of thunder. And according to Basque folklore and mythology, we know that male witches and shamans invoked lightning and thunder to give courage to warriors before an important battle. And this belief right here, which has remained throughout the ages, reflects the figure of Nathan as a god of war, as we find in that monument, both linked to the thunder as one of its powers, which was precisely to give power to warriors before a battle, and linked to war and carnage. Here we can already see a possible function of the monument that was mentioned here before in relation to this deity, as a religious monument calling to this god before a battle, or summoning the god before the battle, to give battle rage to mortal warriors. And the representations of the hands could either be representations of the hand of this deity, of this god, as well as it may be representations of offerings, literally severed hands. I mean, it was not uncommon among Lusitanians, Galicians, Celt-Iberians, Vasconic and Vatans, as well as among Celts and other Celticized peoples, the cult of the severed head. Now, hand offerings are quite plausible, especially to a solar and sky god, as we see among ancient Germans the hand of Tyr, severed by the wolf Fenrir, right? Not only was Tyr a sun goddess and sky god, but we also have clear links to punishment for breaking oaths by cutting off a hand. And the monument may have served as a place of devotion and to call upon this deity, as well as gruesome and macabre offerings to the god, as well as to tell the mythological story of this deity as a god of war and thunder. And curiously, the name Nathan may derive from the Irish war god called Nath, whose name might be derived from the same Celtic root meaning passion or conflict. Although, to be more precise, and this really has to be said, it's a speculation. It's a Tuatha De Danum who was called Nath, and some believe that he could have been a god of war indeed, although there is not a single Irish primary source nor any classical source to prove this. It's a mere deduction based on the old Irish root nith and its meaning struggle, battle or passion, right? However, there's indeed a correspondence between the Irish Nath and the Vasconic Nathan. As here said before on other videos, North and Western Iberian Peninsula show several similarities in folklore, mythology and belief systems to those of Ireland and Scotland, especially among Bronze Age and pre-Roman Iron Age cultures. And there are several clear early evidences of several belief systems from the Iberian Peninsula later on developing in Ireland and Scotland and vice versa, back and forth. A clear exchange of several cultural factors in pre-Roman periods. Now, Nathan could be understood as a divinity of war and martial arts, as in many theogonies of ancient Indo-European societies like Mars, for the Romans, Ares, in the Hellenic world, Indra or Varuna in India, Cuchulainn in Ireland, Horus in Egypt, and so on and so forth. And speaking of Egypt, I should say that there's a similarity with another name. The oldest inscription of Nathan, which was also a proper name, was found in the south of the peninsula, of the Iberian Peninsula, in the territory of the Tartessians, most likely influenced by the Canaanite settlements of Gadir, who assimilated the Egyptian goddess Nath, the great priestess of war and hunting. Therefore, I think there is a series of religious syncretisms here between at least ancient Egyptians, possibly, definitely Tartessians, Vasconians, Romans, and Irish. Be that as it may, the hands of the monument resemble the Hand of Irulegi and other similar hands. These may have served as votive offerings, ex votos, to the god of war, and perhaps in later periods, votive offerings which gained completely different connotations as Roman influence progressively prohibited several types of cults and belief systems. But the origins of the hand may have come from offerings to the god of war for power and battle rage through its thunder. Of course, this then leads us down into a rabbit hole, and there is always the question of the Basque goddess Mari, goddess of thunder and the sky. She's the storm mother or sky mother, a deity who, despite her association with the sky and its phenomenon, she's Mother Earth. She's a chthonic deity, therefore of the underworld. She lives in caves in the mountains. She's the main goddess of pre-Christian Basque mythology. She's married to the god Sugar. He is the male serpent. Together, they are two serpents and are associated with the swastika as two serpents and a cross as a solar symbol. And mainly they come together in the mountains to form the storms. We see here similar associations to those of Nathan: thunder, sky, and sun. Since Mari is an underworld goddess, the hand itself could be a possible offering to her, an ex votos deposited in the earth. But I think that may be pushing a little bit too far. But, interestingly, for me at least, the issue here of Mari and the association with the mountain and the sky and thunder is very similar to that of Zeus in the ancient Greek world. Where Mari resides is basically the Basque Olympus, and if there is anyone in classical mythology who resembles Mari as goddess of the earth, the heavens, the natural phenomena of weather, and especially of thunder, it would be Zeus or Jupiter. Zeus' titles are transparent, and they all testify more or less directly to this deity's relationship with storm and rain and fertility. That is why Zeus is called, for instance, Ombrios, rain giver, and Iethios, of the rain, Horios, who sends favorable winds, Vrodeos, the thunderer, etc. And of course, many other names also link Zeus to fertility and to the underground world, the soil, the fertility of the soil, and the natural phenomenon of the sky that help with fertility. Hesiod, for instance, as a source, Works and Days, tells us that Zeus sends rain and guarantees the fertility of the fields, of the soils. And other classical authors tell us about Zeus, who is worshipped above the heights. The mountain accumulates multiple symbolisms. It is a high point. It is closest to the sky where the clouds accumulate and where thunder is unleashed. And the same type of magical religious thought is found in the goddess Mari of the Basques, precisely. Thor, the Nordic god of thunder, also had a special place on top of a high mountain in Iceland, which then it turned into a church later on. But as I said, Mari is both a sky and underworld goddess and represented as a serpent. Zeus' celestial character does not prevent him from having a chthonic side as well, an underworld side. He was born in a cave and spent his childhood in another cave. He also had an underground dwelling in Cilicia, in Anatolia, not far from the den of the serpent Typhon. And precisely the Zeus that the Hellenics carried on their migrations was represented in the form of a serpent. This was just a curiosity. Be that as it may, Mari and Nathan are deities who are connected at various points by storms, thunder, the sky, and the sun. Although the hand is directly connected with Nathan, perhaps votive objects resembling human hands were offered to Mari as well. The Hand of Irulegi, as well as other similar hands and the ones from the previously mentioned monument, I think it is safe to say we are before modes of communication through gestures, in this case, hand gestures, of course. Language can sometimes be a heavy barrier, but hand gestures can become universal modes of communication. And this reminds me of the horns as a hand gesture, as a hand sign, often becoming almost a universal symbol to ward off evil spirits, and the evil eye as a symbol of protection against curses as well, and to send back the evil eye, or to curse and to curse one's enemies. And thanks to Ronnie James Dio, the gesture was brought into the metal scene and became another universal symbol within the music sphere. Well, the open hand of Irulegi and of the monument could have been a symbol to express or convey a message in relation to the aforementioned deities, without speaking any words. It could have even been a religious symbol, and people would immediately recognize the message by the hand gesture of a deity. So this reminds me of another sort of protective symbol through hand gestures from the Iberian Peninsula. In Spanish it is called la higa, and in Portuguese it's called figa. The la higa is a human hand amulet that continues to be used today to cast the evil eye and wish bad omens on one's enemies. Although this is a more common among old people, of course, as the young are stepping away from certain traditions, and they are also a lot more chill than the old folk, thankfully. Both the gesture and the amulet that contains this gesture are a wording to strangers and outsiders. La higa is a protective amulet originating from the Iberian Peninsula, precisely, adopted by the Romans, and which over time spread throughout the world under different names, of course. Used to cast or ward off the evil eye, envy, jealousy, and as a protective symbol, or protection against diseases. As a sign of great contempt for someone, people used to resort to giving them the figa or la higa gesture. To do this, we close our fists, taking the thumb between the index and middle fingers, directing the hand gesture against the right person, or the wrong person, the very wrong person. And this gesture was, in other times, an expression of a curse directed against people who had a pact with the devil or against the devil himself, progressively becoming this with Christianity, of course. Precisely, some people say this gesture is a cross, and that is why it is effective against evil spirits and the devil, although this is already a Christianization of the symbol, the hand gesture itself. The curse can be done through imprecatory words as well, and gestures, and also using symbols. Actually, I've just reminded myself, one of the phrases used alongside the gesture is, "The lightning will burn you," or "May the lightning burn you," right? It is a curse formula considered the strongest in most of Euskal Herria, the Basque country. There are places in Spain where the word arraio is directed to a person with the sense of curse, just as raio in Portuguese, lightning, can also be used as a curse word. So it's curious, this connection with lightning and the powerful force against someone that can somewhat be directed through a hand gesture. The same idea could very well be present in the open hand gesture of the god of war, Neithin. A gesture that conveys a particular message, could be of protection, or could be to destroy or curse one's enemies, by showing the hand gesture of the deity of lightning and war, of battle rage and carnage. And according to ancient testimonies in Euskal Herria, the Basque country, when a beggar knocked on the door of his village asking for alms, people would first hear in which language he said his prayers. If he spoke Spanish, tough luck, they would send him away without giving him alms. But if he spoke Euskara, Basque, they would give him food or money or both, always taking the precaution of doing the higa la higa during the time he was in the vicinity of the house. So that's it, my dear friends. I hope you have enjoyed this video and I hope it was useful somehow. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. And as always, thank you for today. Until we meet again, my dear friends.